You know, it was, because this world is so much bigger than the original Wreck-It Ralph, and we wanted that because we wanted the contrast. If you're going to do a sequel, you have to have the right reason to do that sequel, and for us there was two reasons. One was, at the end of the first film, the last line Ralph says is, "If that little kid likes me, how bad can I be?" And that felt to us like a really sweet sentiment for the end of that film, but it means Ralph has another journey, because he's still defining himself based on what Vanellope thinks of him. And then we combined that with the idea of taking him to this big, vast, expansive world of the internet, and that got us really excited. But once you sit there and say, okay, now that we're going to do that, you have to say, well, what is that world? What does it look like? And how do we deal with the fact that it's continually changing? We don't want the film to feel outdated in 2 or 3 or 4 years. And so we had to really spend time thinking about what is the story we tell, that it's a universal story, that in 10 or 20 or 30 years is still universal to the world. Because even if the internet has changed, if the story is still emotional and still resonates with people, they'll watch that film. Just like we watch films that are 20, 30, and 40 years old today, they'll do that again in 20 or 30 years if the story is the right story.
En la película, Internet es una gran ciudad donde los usuarios no siempre acaban donde ellos quieren. Cuando cogemos el móvil o nos ponemos delante del ordenador, somos un poco presos de los algoritmos del Big Data.
So oftentimes when we use the internet, we end up in places where we didn't think we wanted to get to. Are we also, and this is something we see in Ralph Breaks Internet, victims, or we depend on these algorithms or a product of big data, and that's where we end up where we end up.
Yeah, you know, when we were talking about how to portray the internet, we realized the internet has two sides to it. There's the incredibly powerful side that connects people from all around the world. It lets us find each other, it lets us find items, it lets us live a world in a much more efficient way. But there's also the really complicated parts, which is things like the comments section or the dark net that we portray in the film, or to your point, the ability to kind of go down that rabbit hole where algorithms are sort of shaping and putting us in places. And we wanted that to be represented also, because to us, it felt like we wanted to show the duality of the internet.
Hablando de los rincones oscuros de Internet y de esa dualidad que comenta, ¿crees que los niños, los más jóvenes, los adolescentes, los más pequeños, están lo suficientemente protegidos de todo lo que les llega a través de la red?
Talking about that duality or the darkness, do you think that youngsters, children, teenagers are sufficiently protected from all those potential threats that the internet can really bring to their doorstep?
You know, I don't know that they are, to be honest with you. I feel like in today's world, the internet it's an open universe that allows people, to your point, to go down these holes that they might not have originally intended. But that's why I think it's important for, you know, parents to have the ability to have conversation with their kids about that. And one of the scenes in the film where Ralph stumbles into this room and it's a comments room is that moment where we want parents to kind of open the doors for the conversation with their kids to say, you got to be careful in this world. You got to be careful of what you might see in the internet or what might be said in the internet. And I think that's the complicated part in today's world. But if we can entertain the audience in our film, as well as sort of give the ability to talk about a deep subject matter like the complexities of the internet, then that's what we want to try to do.
La película también habla de cómo ahora, precisamente en Internet, la felicidad o nuestro éxito se mide a través de likes, de lo que piensan los otros. Eso no es muy peligroso realmente.
As we see in Ralph Breaks Internet, is it not very dangerous the fact that our success or, you know, how people view us is defined by our likes or our popularity?
Yeah, I think that's one of there was a point in time where we actually explored that directly from a storytelling standpoint. We had a story where we said to ourselves, what if Vanellope goes into the internet and she gets caught up with this idea of likes, and she suddenly defines who she is based on the number of likes she has. And we said, well, that's not really Vanellope's character. She's a strong female character who probably wouldn't get caught up in that kind of a thing. So the story kept evolving. But that's why I think that room where we see Ralph in there is so critical, because to your point, I think in today's world, people are allowing themselves to be defined by things that are being said through this incredible vehicle of the internet. And that's the complex part of it. On the other side of it, though, there is this amazing thing that happens in the internet, which is people can communicate with each other in a very positive way. And I'll give one example. I am somebody who was evacuated from my home in Malibu, California, and I have no information on my house other than through the internet. That's my one communication vehicle to understand what's happening because I can't get in to see. And that is incredibly powerful. I never realized the true value of it until you're put in that situation and you realize it becomes a communication tool that allows you to get the information you need. And so I really see those two sides of it. And again, I think kids have to be careful, but we can't say that the internet itself doesn't have value, because it really does.
Y ahora, para terminar, quería que habláramos un poquito de la escena estrella de la película de las princesas Disney, de esa maravillosa actualización. ¿No crees que se han ganado su propio spin-off, o al menos una serie ahora que Disney va a tener su propio servicio de streaming?
So now that Disney has its own streaming, don't you think that, I think it's the star sequence, the princesses, doesn't that merit its own spin-off, or something more should come out of that?
Well, we'll see where that eventually leads. You know, it was one of the original ideas pitched on the film. It's very rare that something pitched 3 years ago actually ends up in the movie. These movies go on incredible journeys. And so for that scene, almost exactly the way it was originally pitched to still be in the film, says there is something there. And the audience really seems to enjoy that part of it, because we are having a little bit of fun at ourselves. You know, we're sort of poking fun at ourselves, but in a very respectful way. And so we'll see where that ultimately leads, but we can see that the audience is really enjoying that aspect.